Like watches and wonders, there's always a palette of models and materials to be discovered at Cartier. Pieces that have created and still enhance the history of an extraordinary heritage, infusing knowledge and the brilliance of precious stones. Today we take a look at the Tortue watch. It was in 1912 that this shape made its first appearance on the watchmaking scene, designed by Louis Cartier and inspired, as you can imagine, by turtles. Here it's reborn as part of the Cartier Privé collection, which highlights the design of its iconic models, and in numbered variations in limited editions in order to return to the history of the shapes that are at the source of the Cartier watchmaking legend, including the Santos and the tank watches.
En fait, la montre tortue, donc, elle est très intéressante dans l'histoire de l'horlogerie et l'histoire de Cartier, bien entendu. Elle a été créée la première fois donc, en 1912. Et en fait, elle s'inscrit dans un travail sur les formes chez Cartier, et notamment pour la montre de poignet, donc dès 1904.
In fact, the turtle watch is very interesting in the history of watchmaking and the history of Cartier, of course. It was created for the first time in 1912, and in fact, it's part of, how can I say, a work on shapes at Cartier, and in particular for the wristwatch from 1904, since we date from 1904, the first watch offered to Santos Dumont, whose heir we see here. The shape of the case is a square with rounded corners, and for the first time in the history of watchmaking is designed to be worn on the wrist, and therefore includes in the case the metal parts that connect the case to the leather strap. That's it, the revolution of the Santos watch. That's why we say that it's the first watch designed to be worn on the wrist. So 1904, this one. 1906, a watch that's missing from this presentation that's called the tonneau. The tonneau, in fact, is a kind of turtle, but elongated, therefore thinner. And since it's more elongated, it's curved. That's to say, it follows the curve of the wrist. That too is an approach that we owe to the eye of the jeweler. That's to say, when an object is worn on the body, it must absolutely follow the lines of the body, not constrain the movement. It's both a question of ergonomics, but also of beauty, and therefore the perception of elegance of an object that doesn't constrain you. The turtle was born in 1912, and it was made smaller, therefore a little wider, and so it's small enough to be contained on the flat of the wrist. So that's why it's flat and not curved.
Pour être contenu sur le plat du poignet, donc c'est pour ça qu'elle est plate et non pas courbe. Et en fait, 1917 sera donc le premier dessin de la montre tank. Et ce qui est intéressant, donc vous voyez ici un exemple mini, et en fait c'est le même principe, c'est-à-dire que la recherche qui a été menée dans cette quinzaine d'années.
And in fact, 1917 saw the first drawing of the tank watch. What's interesting, you see here a mini example, it's the same principle. That is to say that the research that was carried out in these 15 years was the essentiality of a form, of a box, that could connect the two parts of a bracelet and a leather bracelet. So the Santos is the first step, then the tonneau, and the turtle are part of the same reflection, so one flat, the other curved. But it is in fact two curved lines, a parenthesis in a way, around the box, and which connects each of the pieces of the bracelets, and the tank, two straight lines. Between the turtle and the tank, I would say, there is the same outcome, meaning that we are in the same essentiality of object. After that, it's a question of taste. But in fact, it marks this evolution. And what's interesting is that once again, each model can be seen as a step towards even more essentiality in the form, but each model has its own aesthetic validity. And that's what I find interesting. That is to say that when we offered a model for sale, it was because we really saw its interest in aesthetic terms. And once again, on this logic of Louis Cartier, which consisted of thinking about the future of this form, and what could be done with it, the future proved him right for each of his forms. That is to say that each of these forms which were created in the first 15 years, or the first 20 years of the 20th century, have all endured, have all been successes, and are all references today in the world of watchmaking, and have all given rise to variations in terms of proportions, in terms of calling for decorations, in digressions, in terms of designs, dials, functionalities. Because here, this year, we're offering this complication which is eminently Cartier, which is a chronograph with a single button, a single pusher. And here too, the choice, this complication which appeared in our company in the Tortue model in 1928, is very interesting, because the logic is, in fact, to make the watch even more essential by reducing the number of buttons, because a chronograph normally has 3 buttons. Here, with the presence of a single button, you preserve more of the purity of the form. So it's a complication which corresponds to the aesthetic concern of the house. And of course, this movement is incredible because in addition, it has a turtle shape. That is to say that it's not a round movement that is inserted in a turtle shape, it's a movement that was designed specifically to inhabit this shape. And you can see it from the back. I don't know if we will be able to see it. There is an opening and you see the entire movement that actually occupies the entire watch. And in fact, a shaped movement is already a complication. It's already a work of watchmaking, but also a purely creative work in terms of design.
C'est un mouvement qui a été conçu spécifiquement pour habiter cette forme-là. Et vous pouvez le voir d'ailleurs de dos, enfin je ne sais pas si on pourra le voir, il y a une ouverture. Il y a une ouverture et vous voyez la totalité du mouvement qui effectivement occupe toute la montre. Et donc c'est une conception, comment dire, spécifique pour cette montre. Et en fait, un mouvement de forme est déjà une complication. C'est déjà une œuvre horlogère, mais aussi une œuvre purement créative en termes de dessin.
All these very accomplished versions of the Tortue watch and its sisters, the Tank and the Santos, which proudly carry the historical codes of the jeweler Cartier.